Can you hear us, Mr. Bass?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm calling the December 15th, 2021 City Council meeting to order. There is a quorum present. Item number 2, the Citizens Forum. Persons desiring to address the council must limit their presentation to no more than 2 minutes. Unless an item is posted on the agenda, the Texas Open Meetings Act prohibits the council from responding to any comments other than to refer the matter to a future agenda, to an existing policy, or to a staff person with specific factual information. Claims against the city, council members, or employees, as well as individual personal appeals, are not appropriate for citizens forum. If necessary, the city council may convene into executive session under Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Local Code regarding any item on this agenda. I'll open the public forum if you wish to come forward. I can see feet back there. Okay. Seeing none, the Citizens Forum is closed. Item number 3, receive, discuss, and provide direction on information from Robert T. Bass, Allison, Bass and McKee, LLP, regarding 2020 census data, changing demographics in the council districts since 2020, and proposed city council redistricting maps. Should that read 2010? The last sentence of the paragraph.
You would be changing your 2010 boundaries.
Yes, I'm just correcting it on our agenda, 2010. All right. Mr. Bass, would you like to begin?
Yes, ma'am. As you recall, last time we met, we went over your initial assessment, which disclosed that you had a considerable discrepancy in your one person, one vote proportional balance. In the interim, I've developed a couple of plans for your consideration, and then we have possibly some opportunity for you to direct me a little bit and how you might want a third option, if you would. I'm going to pull up and share my screen with you if I can. Are you able to see a screen there?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to call up what I call Plan A. There are different ways to cut a pie, and there are different ways to draw a redistricting plan. In this plan, let me go back to your base map just to refresh everybody's memory. Under the current boundaries, the difficulties are we have a real large imbalance in precinct 7. It's overpopulated by 841 people, or 24%. The districts that ward touches are Ward 3, which is somewhat slightly underpopulated at 170 people below the ideal. And then you have 6, which is overpopulated as well by about 110 people. And then up here in the north, 7 touches 4, and 4 is overpopulated by about 200 people. But it's the inner core boxes, wards 1, 2, and 5 that are underpopulated. And those districts also happen to be the districts that have more substantial minority population in them. So in trying to preserve the minority voting strength of those inner wards, we're having to add large numbers of population to them. One is underpopulated by 408, two is underpopulated by 359, and five is underpopulated by about 219. So those wards are going to be receiving considerable population that is largely less minority than what is in those wards at the present time. So the difficulty is making those changes and preserving the voting strength of minority populations in 1 and 2 particularly, but to a lesser extent, 5. So with that explanation, let's look at Plan A. The idea in Plan A was to sort of bridge the northern part and connect the northern part of Paris, preserving intact the representative from Ward 1. Unfortunately, in doing that, in my first effort, the percentages were not that acceptable. And in my first effort, I had both representatives for precinct 2, or I had the representative for Ward 5 in precinct 2. So I amended that a little bit, changed the boundary to bring the council member for 5 into its district, preserve 2. But in the process, the minority percentages fell to 31.6% in Ward 1 of Black population and 38.87 in Ward 2. 10 years ago, the benchmark and the last pre-cleared plan was 44% Black in 1 and 43.6 in 2. Now, as I noted, 10 years ago, the overall total city population of Black residents was 58,013. That has fallen to 5643. So there's been about a 0.3% drop in the Black population. The Anglo population has also declined as a percentage from 63.8 to 56.6. And what has increased is the Black population has increased from, the Hispanic population has increased from 8.22% 10 years ago to 11.8%. So in the final analysis, the Anglo percentage 10 years ago in box 1 was 45.42% and 45.55%. And in Plan A, that District 1, the Anglo percentage climbs to 50.36%, but it declines in Ward 2 to 43.07. So Plan A, in my opinion, is less favorable on the basis of voting rights compliance, and I would not recommend probably considering Plan A. Does anybody have questions about that?
Council, comments or questions?
I think I was just trying to look at my District 4. I don't even think I'm in District 4 on this one. I think I meshed into District 1, I believe. But that's just a comment.
I made a change in that to keep you're just barely inside 4.
I got you. I'm very appreciative of you thinking me there.
Yeah. I think the first set of maps I sent you, you were outside and I didn't see that. And so I made this change to bring you back in.
No problem.
But like I say, I'm not real sure that we want to consider that plan. So I'm going to look now to Plan B. Plan B is the way we had addressed the population imbalance is we took 3 over and took a big chunk out of the southern part of 7, brought 7 down, and then moved the other considerable part of what had been in 7 into 6, and then shed population out of 6 into 5 and 1, and we balanced 4 and 3. So this was just a different approach, trying to address the large imbalance in 7 and another imbalance in 6. And so we've drawn the numbers down to a deviation of 1.6%, with the deviation falling between districts 2 at 0.89% under, and District 3 I take that back, at 0.7%, 2 at 0.89 below, and 3.71 above. So in the minority representation, there is still some weakening of the minority strength in Ward 2 and in Ward 1 from 10 years ago. But it's at 40.88% in Ward 1, whereas it was 44% in 2010. And in Ward 2, it's 38.26% under this plan, whereas 10 years ago, Ward 2 was 43.16%. However, the Anglo percentage has dropped from 45.42% and 45.55% in 2010 to 43% and 41.81% in wards 1 and 2. So actually, overall, they're stronger as a combined minority district, which 10 years ago, it was not a minority majority Black or a minority majority Hispanic. It was a combined minority majority district. And it's that way now, but the Hispanic percentage has climbed from 10 years ago being 7.16 and 6.65 to 10.35 and 12.43% Hispanic. So combined Black and Hispanic populations actually has a stronger minority majority district than was 10 years ago. So Plan B under the Voting Rights Act is a stronger candidate. That being said, it might be possible, but I've struggled to make it work. But with your indulgence, I would like to kind of do some work with you as a guiding my hand a little bit. What I'm going to pull up now is the existing districts with the red symbol showing where the incumbents reside. And I'm going to highlight the census and make it the working layer. And I'm going to ask the computer to show me those areas where the voting age Black population is the greatest. And I'm going to break it into So what you see in this illustration is where the black population, 18 and older, the voting age black population is the most dense. The colors are a little bit altered by the ethnicity overlay, but you can see the red is precinct 1, the yellow is precinct 2, the blue down below is 3, 4 is the purple, 5 is the green, and 6 is the I'm not sure what turquoise, and then more lavender is the 7. So this shows you the concentration where the yellow is more yellow, or the darker green is where the black population is 80% or above, where the yellow is less yellow or slightly shaded, the population is 50 to 80% black. So what you see is there's really not a lot of concentrations outside of this central core 3 wards. So in trying to add population to those 3 wards and still keep the minority content high, it's rather difficult because of all of the blocks in between. For example, this 80% or more and this 80% or more, there's 2 blocks of under 40%. So you really, every area that's not shaded at all means that you're going through mostly Anglo population. So that is the sort of the dilemma of trying to keep those percentages up. And with your patience, I would like to try to modify this map a little bit and show you how it's done. But again, we still have to start with the problem of moving all of this population out. And so I tend to think, does anybody disagree with me that extending 3 over into this area of 7, the south end of 7, taking in the airport, would be one way to do that, to shed the population there into 3 and lower this percentage. And so we have less population to move through 6 into the core center.
I think that's very doable.
All right, so we're making 3 the target, and we're going to start selecting census blocks. And as we go, we will be able to see sort of a running count as we make the assignments. Sometimes you can see irregular shapes of the census blocks sometimes make what we want to do a little more difficult. But in this area that I've selected now, we'll see how many folks there are. There are only 58 people in all of that area. So we're not going to make a big dent in the overpopulation of 800 people in 7, but that's a start. So we'd make that assignment, and that area goes over into 3. And then we can start looking at other areas to reduce the imbalance between 4 and 3. And we might take some of this area right here out of 4 and move it into 3 to get 3 balanced. So we would start doing that. 3 is still the target, but we would do something like that, see what that does to the balance. We're now down to only 58 people that are out of whack. So we could make one more change, and bring the deviation in 3 down to 0.26. So that's a pretty good start. So we've balanced 3. And now we have to go back and start looking at still taking some of this population out of 7. We're eventually going to have to move population either out of 4 into 1. And I did that with Plan A, and it weakened the population in 1 minority population. But there's really not any minority population to speak of over the percentage of 50% in 6. So really, we're going to need to move population out of 7 into 6, possibly out of 4 into 6, and then move that population into the east end of 5, and then take some of this population into 1 to try to keep the population in precinct 1, the minority population up, because as you can see, we've got some census blocks along there. They're not big blocks. They're not a lot of people, but that's about the only concentrations along the boundaries with 1. There's similarly some minority populations down in this area that could go into 2. But that's the difficulty with the way the census blocks are situated. Is everybody with me so far? All right, so we're going to start taking population out of 7 and shedding it over into 6. So target would be 6. And we would just start selecting blocks and see what that does when we assign them. We've now brought 7 down to 11%. So we could still shed some more into 6. We're almost there. Okay, 7 is now a little bit underpopulated, and 4 is overpopulated. So I'm thinking about taking that block and seeing if I add that back into 7, if that would balance 7. And it did. So 7 is now balanced. And 4 is balanced. But we have this 1 block that's in 4 now. If I make it 7, I'm going to overpopulate 7 again. So I need to take, and then here's some isolated blocks here that are in, being counted in 4. So that's a problem. So I'm going to add those to 6 temporarily. And I need to, 4 is overpopulated. I need to add some population out of 7 into 4. Excuse me, 7 is overpopulated again. So I need to go back into 4. Too many. It's 597 right there. So
What is this right here? Do you know what that is right there?
7 is now underpopulated. 4 is underpopulated by 2.01. That would be okay if we can keep everything else under that.
So that's highlighted.
Uh,
Minority folks sleep. Okay.
okay. Where else?
Something, how we can just put those blocks and just all of a
crazy.
sudden.
All right, now we get to the hard part. So we got a shed population out of 6 into 5. And we'll do that along this boundary right here. So So 6 is overpopulated by 1,000 people and 5 needs only 200. So that brings 5 down to 0.57, but we still need to lose some population out of 6. The only place to do that is in 4, which is underpopulated. 4 is underpopulated by 73 people. So those 2 blocks there would, going into 4, would bring that down to 0.54, but it still leaves 6 pretty heavily overpopulated. So I'm going to need to take population out of 5, add it to 1 to start working on that underpopulation in 1. So my guess is we would take these blocks that lay along the southern boundary of 1, see what that does. That we're still underpopulated by in 1 by 200 people, and there's really not any big blocks nearby. We could take something like that. Trying to keep the lines as relatively smooth as possible, but we're adding Anglo population here. So I'm not sure what the numbers are going to end up being, but we still need to add some more population. So to do that, I'm going to take a couple of these blocks out of 2. And now we've got 1 balanced, and we need to add some population out of 6 into 5. Now we have to add population to 2 out of 5. Try to preserve as much minority strength as we can by taking in these blocks here. So 2 is the target. All right. We've kept everybody in their ward. And just looking at a quick look, I would have to run the chart, but I think this plan may be better than plan B, but I'll have to run the chart to determine that. This will take just a second. I'm sorry for the delay, but it's something that the only way I can do it is this way to get a full count. Well, I'm disappointed. Based on these numbers, the Plan C is not as good as Plan B. So that effort did not work, and it results in some fairly chaotic lines, but that was quickly done. But you can see the difficulty of keeping 1 and 2 high in relatively high in the minority content, just because the population has become more dispersed and less in number of Black population. The Hispanic population is up 3 percentage points, but I don't know that this Plan C was worth the trouble. But I wanted you to see how the work is done. Does anybody have questions or suggestions?
So it sounds like you're saying that the greater part of the minority population within our community lives in District 1 and 2. Is that correct?
Okay, yes.
Okay, and that's tough because during this exercise, I know when we were looking at 5 to 1, it almost seemed like the diversity of 5 was kind of going back into 1, and it's like, well, now you're taking out the diversity in that Plan C. So that's tough. I see the dilemma you're kind of stuck in, and it makes your job, I guess, that much more difficult.
Well, it was not that easy 10 years ago to create those districts with that level. And as I say, there are 3 things that kind of mitigate this a little bit. Let's go to, I'm going to save that plan just to have it saved. Let's go back to Plan B. Plan B, as I say, it has statistically the Black population 10 years ago was 44.04 in 1 and 43.16 in District 2. The Hispanic population 10 years ago was 7.16 in 1 and 6.65 in 2. The Anglo population in 1 was 45.42 and 45.55. So though that's a slim, but it is a minority majority district. By that I mean that a good minority candidate, Hispanic or Black, could be viable in those 2 districts with crossover votes among Hispanic, Black, some Anglo, and possibly other of the minority characterizations. 10 years ago, the number of people reporting multi-race and other race was rather small. More than 2 racial identities was 1.81 in 1 and 2.98. Those numbers are now up to 3.56 and 4.85. What that means is that there are more people now who consider themselves non-Anglo because the Anglo population has declined in Ward 1 and Ward 2 from 45.4 and 45.5 to 43 and 41.8. So as I noted before, as a minority-majority district under Plan B, it's actually more combined minority viable, but it's weaker in black population than it was 10 years ago. And that's attributable to black population declining by about, 200 or so people. And 200 people is, that's about a full 2 percentage points or more. So that 200 people could take considerable bite out of both 1 and 2. Statistically, there are fewer Anglos today than there were 10 years ago. So that's one reason the Anglo percentage has declined. So overall, the city has lost about 695 people in population in the 10 years. So those are all factors that add into it. But of the 3 plans I've developed, one with your help, Plan B is the one that I could have some confidence would meet both the constitutional 1 person, 1 vote and the voting rights test. I have some question about Plan A, but Plan C, I don't believe is a starter. So I can go back to the drawing boards, or I'd like to hear some thoughts on your part.
I mean, if Plan B is sound, then I feel like that's where you start, right? I mean, Plan A sounded like it was kind of, it seemed okay, but then it's had its own issues, and then Plan C kind of fell apart on its own. So, what are the options here? I mean, if you allude to Plan B, what do you go from there? Do you fine tune, or?
Well, again, you can see kind of what we've done. We've taken, to some extent, we've taken a big chunk out of 2, trying to keep 1 viable and 2 viable, but both are slightly weakened from what they were 10 years ago. I don't necessarily attribute that to drawing the lines. It's more just demographically, loss of population, increased Hispanic population. Those are the factors that kind of have driven it. I'm not sure there's a whole lot I can do to improve on Plan B. So
Plan B sounds like that's our best option for within the laws and means of redistricting.
I think it's a suitable plan, but I'd like to hear from the council their thoughts on it.
Well, I like what you did to District 7 and adding the airport and the area around it to District 3. How does District 3 council?
Yeah, give me the problems. No, it looks good.
How about a gas allowance?
No, yeah, it looks good. District 1 and 2, though, because of the minority population, I can imagine that being difficult to, break out.
Well, it has been difficult. The problem is, like I say, the population 20, 30, 40 years ago, the minority populations were contained in very distinct neighborhoods. As economics have changed, better jobs, better employment opportunities, populations have tended to spread out. And so that makes every 10 years we try to gather them back up, and it gets harder every cycle. And so are some case law that says you cannot make race the predominant factor in redistricting, and extreme lines, if they have no other explanation than race, are unconstitutional. But the Voting Rights Act says we have to strive to protect and maintain minority populations as best we can. So I think Plan B is a workable solution, but I'd like to hear from anybody from those two districts as to their thoughts on it.
Let me say this. District 1 and 2 are difficult, but wouldn't District 7 be, I mean, was that just as difficult because it's so heavily populated with whites?
Well, it's pretty easy to shift population. That's not that hard. I mean, you saw you can move the population.
No, I meant
Have
race.
to be particular about it.
I meant race. You know, District 7 is almost majority, white.
Yes, District 7 is 77% Anglo. So it's not that hard to move Anglos around, but trying to preserve minority voting rights in 1 and 2 is the tough part. So I'm going to pull that slide over so you can see that data a little better. Like I say, under the Voting Rights Act, there's two tests. One is constitutional, one person, one vote, and that's what this number represents. We try to get that number as low as we can to give you room for growth in the future. So we've got it down below 2%. That's excellent. But once you start making boundary changes, you have to look at your voting rights issues. And I'm going to highlight the areas that are important.
I forgot they were talking about the weight of your vote. What your vote.
So what I've highlighted down here is voting age. Again, I don't have a slide, but I'm just going to give you the numbers from 10 years ago. 44.04 in 1 and 43.16 was the black percentage. That's dropped in 1 to 40.8 and 38.2. So it's about a 4-point drop in 1 and about a 5-point drop in 2, 5 percentage points. The ethnicity, the Hispanic population was 7.16 10 years ago, so it's come up 3 percentage points. And it was 6.65, so it's come up 6 percentage points in 10 years. And we have this factor, the multi-race. I'm assuming most of that is going to be a mix of Anglo-Black, Anglo-Hispanic, Black-Hispanic, Black-Anglo. So that population doesn't consider themselves necessarily in politically and voting Anglo, but they probably have more in common with minority populations economically and the like. Same schools, same areas of city. So those three brackets added together make the Anglo percentage go down from 45.42 and 45.55 to 43 and 41.8%. So it's actually stronger combined minority in this plan. That's why I say it's, of the three plans, it's probably the best solution. Is it perfect? No. Could it be challenged? maybe, but a challenger is going to have to show that you could do better. And I've really spent quite a bit of time on it, and I haven't been able to make it do better. But that's not necessarily to say that somebody else couldn't. But to do that, they're going to have to go to some extreme. They're not going to be able to have relatively straight lines. And I know those lines don't look all that straight, but going back to the C plan to show you where that Hispanic or the minority populations are. As you can see, there's really most all of the census blocks that have any population in them are already in 1 and 2. And to get to the remaining blocks, you have to go some distance through heavily less minority areas. And once you get there, you usually find out, for example, here's a box that could be added to 1 across the 82, but there's only, looks like 8 people there. So they may be all black, but you'd only add 8 to the numbers. So a lot of times once you get there, you realize it's not really been worth the trip. So those are the realities of the way your population is distributed. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that. That's just the way it is.
So you think the numbers on Plan B would satisfy the court?
If challenged, I'm not saying you would be challenged. I think this plan is acceptable, probably. But I can't speak, for the minority community. But it's the best I've been able to come up with. And I'm not, I'm not looking at it through the eyes that the minority community might look at it. So I don't know.
From what we've seen, that looks like the best plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Plan B is the best option. It doesn't give you much room to maneuver with District 1 and 2 being the most minority populated areas.
Well, I'm not trying to drive the bus, but I would be fairly comfortable defending that plan, I guess, if somebody were to challenge it.
Ms. Knox?
No, I think that's
Mr.
fine.
Pilgrim? Any comments?
Looks good to me. I mean, like I said,
I think that's as good as it's going to
Yeah,
get.
staff, you have any input? No? Mr. Bass, I think we have a consensus on Plan B.
Okay, if that is the case, tonight is just sort of a workshop. What does your calendar look like going forward for a public hearing? I normally would recommend that when are your next meetings, I guess I need to ask.
January 10th.
when does this go into effect?
It would go into effect January 1 for your next election. It would still, you would continue under your current, when is your next election, in May?
May.
May.
Yes, May the 7th.
These lines would stay in effect, but would go into effect for people wanting to run for office January 1.
Our next meetings are January 10th and the 24th, I believe. We had originally planned a workshop, I think January 3rd, but it sounds like we may no longer need that workshop at this point.
My recommendation would be that you roll these out at your January 10th meeting and let the public look at it, and then hold a public hearing on the 24th to actually vote on it and receive public comment. Depending on the comments you get, if there were comments that were substantive, if somebody had a plan after the 10th, that they, I would publish the maps in the data in the newspaper, or get a newspaper to carry it as a news story. If somebody came forward with a plan before the 24th that I could analyze, it could be you would have another option to consider. But that way you've given the public plenty of transparency on the plans you're considering.
Mr.
That's
Bass,
just my recommendation.
Mr. Bass, how do you recommend that we display this on the 10th? Is just have a discussion item to show the map, I guess, or is there anything we need to say in particular on the 10th? Or
No, well, I would just say that you met in workshop and developed a plan, and this is the plan that we think that we're going to consider voting on the 24th. And we're just making it available for the public as a discussion item, or as just present it or report it. I'm not sure how y'all normally do those things before you adopt something.
we can certainly have an item on the 10th to display the map. But if we're able to get a copy of this somehow to over us, we can put it on our website and then obviously have it in our packet on the 10th. But particularly if you can get this to us in this shape file, we can get it on our website for people to look at as well.
We had some trouble today getting you a good shape file. Did that ever come through satisfactorily?
We did get something. I was out for a couple hours, so I didn't get a chance to talk to my GIS coordinator on that. But we did print something off, and the council has it in front of them.
Yeah. Well, we can certainly work on getting you a suitable map. I can probably, between now and January the 10th, even send you a printed map.
I think if you can send us both a printed map and the shape file,
Yeah.
I believe we have the ability to scan it in to our system as well, so we can at least do that much if the shape file doesn't work out.
Okay. Normally, I don't display on the public maps the residential locations just for privacy, but I need them so I don't disenfranchise anybody. But I would take that layer off, and that's pretty easy to do. Just a click on the mouse and they go away. But
Yes, if you could remove the council member's house address,
yeah,
that'd be good.
yeah. Okay, I will send you recommended agendas, the public notice that I used. You're free to edit it to your needs, but I will send that to you tonight. And for January the 10th as for a rollout, and January the 24th for public hearing. Is that right?
That'll work.
What time are both of those meetings? Same time, 5:30?
Correct. Would you be joining us on January 10th or just January 24th?
Let me look at my calendar. I think I can join you. Let me see. Close my calendar. That's what do you mean? I would like to join you. I think I can. I don't recall those days being booked, but let me look. January the 10th at 5:30. I'm open. And on the 24th, I already had you down for that day, so I'm open both days. Okay, what else?
Any more questions of Mr. Bass?
No, I don't have any.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bass, very much, and appreciate staff being here.
Very good. I will leave you now and I'll get those, documents to you here in a short period of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, I'll hear a motion to adjourn in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm slipping.